Welcome to Story Jam Theater. I'm your host, Chris Krimitsos. If you're moved and inspired by stories, then you're in the right place. On today's show, veteran storyteller Ron Laker shares his account of becoming a CEO of a company and finding out that there is no soul to the company. There is no corporate culture. I don't know what you would do, but Ron shares what he did, and it's a pretty amazing story. So enjoy today's session.
I grew up in a small town in Indiana, in the cornfields of southern Indiana, a place called Batesville, Indiana. It's the home of Hill-Rom Industry and Hillenbrand Industries. In that environment, about 3,000 people in that town, I played a lot of athletics and sports. I also was very greatly influenced by my father. My father passed away 9 years ago at 96, which would make him 105 today. I so vividly remember my father coming in and out of the house every day at work. He was a product of the Depression. He had a 6th or 7th grade education. He lived in fear and scarcity. I was the youngest of 5 children. His background was that. That's who he was. For 42 years, he only missed 2 days of work. He was a great role model for the work ethic. I used my basketball ability. I could run, I could jump, I could play defense, I could hit a jump shot, and it was my ticket out of Batesville, Indiana, to get an athletic scholarship to Xavier University in Cincinnati. The Xavier Musketeers, and I played basketball there for 4 years. I'm going to fast forward now. About 15 years ago, I started a company within a very large company called the David Joseph Company. And the company that I started, I doodled on a placemat at a diner in a very low period of my life when I was looking for a why. And that why was I had the ability to change the lives of some people. And I did it in the business that I was in. So we created Trademark Metals Recycling. It was a roll-up of 3 companies, the one that I worked for, and 2 others. And it was a really big deal. We had a lot of aspirations, and we were really, really excited about this. Well, the scrap metal industry, we took big pieces of metal and we turned them into little pieces. And we sold those little pieces to the steel industry, and we marketed it worldwide through ports in Florida and railroads, etc. And we were very, very good at it. My parent company was 100 years old, and we had a fledgling start of this new business. Well, scrap metal is one of the leading indicators as the direction of the economy. 2 statistics that Warren Buffett pays attention to is the price of #1 heavy melt steel and the amount of rail car loadings that rail cars have, because it indicates the economic activity. Well, what the price of scrap told us 90 days after we did this business were that we were going to be headed into a recession. And the value of our product that all of these forecasts and projections were on, the value of that product dropped 60% in 90 days. We're not in a speedboat, we're in an ocean liner. So my team and myself never worked harder in our entire careers to hold on to this Titanic, if you will. Well, we go into crisis mode. We know we're not going to go out of business. My company had been around 100 years. They had seen the ups and downs. They had been through these cycles. And I had been conditioned to realize take the opportunity of misfortune, and the recession was an opportunity for us to create even a larger company more quickly. It was going to bring acquisition targets to the table much more quickly. And it did. So after about 2 years, we had acquired about 6 companies. These were all independent, family-run businesses. They all had their own independent cultures. They all beat to a different drummer. And that's what we had to put our arms around. Buying the businesses was the easy part. We had money. They had a desire to get out of the business. We had a clear vision. I had people who followed my vision. This was going to happen, not a problem. But on Thursday, a company that was a competitor on Wednesday now all of a sudden was a partner with us. And the culture alone was absolutely mind-boggling to deal with. We're 2.5 years into this business. We've just come out of a recession. I'm happy as a clam that we are doing so well. We grew the business. We didn't lay anybody off. We didn't make any money. We have a clear, we're coming out of this and we're going to know we're going to be stronger, better than we were. So I had a philosophy that I wanted to bring all of these far-flung cultures together. And the philosophy that I had in my head was called all for one and one for all. And I shared this philosophy with a couple of my general managers, who were all these type A individuals that ran these family-run businesses, and it was like herding wolves. And I even likened to that we were a pack of wolves. I picked the deer, we all chased the deer. And that's what we did. Well, I had this philosophy, all for one and one for all. It was the mantra of Xavier University basketball team, the Musketeers. The Musketeers were an 18th century fighting force, and their sole purpose in France was to protect the throne under the mantra, all for one and one for all. The three Musketeers, D'Artagnan, led by D'Artagnan. So I had this rattling around in my head that this is what we're going to do, and this is going to be the culture that we're going to have. Now at that time, we had 330 people maybe in the company. We had 15 locations. We had a group of people that was making $200,000 a year. We had a group of people that were making $75,000 a year. And then I had 300 people that were making $10 an hour. And there are two ways that businesses get run. They either get run by the people that create the numbers, or the numbers dictate the people. And I was bound and determined to create a culture that the people created the numbers. If we all did what we were going to do together, all for one and one for all, we would all profit equally. I thought it was a noble gesture and a noble cause. Problem was, I couldn't get it out of my head down to the shop floor. The shop floor, there was a huge disconnect for me and 300 employees down here. And I'm bound and determined to figure out how we're going to do this, but I just can't figure it out. So I put together, I initiate a survey. We put a survey out to all of our employees. Remember, we just came out of recession. Nobody got laid off. Nobody got fired. We grew the business. We're now going to start making money. So we put out this survey. And this survey comes back 3 weeks later, and I'm excited. I can't wait to see the results of the survey. I think we're doing okay. 95% of the people filled out the survey. 75% of the people wrote comments. And when people write comments, you better pay attention. So I laid in bed one night and I opened up this survey and I started reading these comments. I worked my way from the back to the front. And the statements that were written so affected me, I was shaken in my bed. Comments were, nobody respects me. Nobody listens to me. I haven't had a raise in 3 years. The place is deplorable. If I get told one more time it's my way or the highway, I'm taking the highway. And my personal favorite, the supervisors are sleeping with the secretaries and nobody's doing anything about it. I looked at this thing and I just about threw up. So the next day, I go to my vice president of operations and my HR person. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to hop in a car. We're going to drive to all 13, 14 locations. We're going to meet with every individual of the company. One-on-one, one-on-5, one-on-10. I don't know. I don't care. I don't know how we do it. But that's what we're going to do over the next 90 days. So, okay, sounds like a good idea. So armed with this data, Tim, Michelle, and I hop in a car and we drive over to Cocoa Beach. Big scrap operation, big exporting operation that we had over there. It was one of the companies that we acquired in the initial roll-up. I knew a lot of the people that were in that organization, but I didn't know many of the hourly workers that were there. So the first meeting that we walk into, it's in a employee break room. It's the shredder crew. It's about 30 people. They take these big pieces of metal, they turn them into little pieces, and they shred these cars. I really don't know what I'm going to say. I walk into this room, and as that door opens up, and it's a typical employee break room, okay? Picnic tables that are smudgy, the bathroom's long overdue for a paint job, There are vending machines that have very little food in them. There's Coke machines that are practically out of Cokes. You get the picture. So I walk in there, and as that door opens up, and I'm the first one in that door, Tim and Michelle are following me in, and that door breaks open. I look up, and there are 30 sets of eyes staring at me. Every one of those eyes was my father. My father never made more than $2.65 an hour in his life. He lived in fear and scarcity. He kept his head down, always worried about he was going to get laid off. The boss always, whoever came down, usually rip somebody's tail. It wasn't to compliment you. All of a sudden, I walk into that space, and they go, "Who is this guy?" He drives a big black car, lives in the big house on the hill. He's going to come in there and rip us apart. My father. That's who was in that room. So I walked in there, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I sat down on the edge of a picnic table, and I go, "Guys, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on. Susan, tell me what's going on." 5 painless minutes of silence. Nobody would open up. Not one. And I sat there and I go, "Guys, I got these surveys. Here's what you said. I'm going to go from here, then we're going to go to Orlando, then we're going to go to Daytona, and then I'm going down to Miami, and I'm going to Palm Beach, I'm going back to Tampa, I'm going to Sarasota, I'm going to Pinellas Park, I'm going everywhere. We're going to sit down and have the same conversation. I need your help. You got to help me help you." So eventually they start opening up. And again, I get thrown up all over my shoes about how bad we're doing. So at the end of this thing, after about an hour, I go, "Guys, if we're doing something so bad, what is it that we're doing right?" And this guy way back in the corner hadn't said a word the whole time. He says, "Well, Mr. Laker, the mere fact that you're here and you look like you sincerely care is a good start." And it really dawned on me that people don't care what you say until they know that you care. And at that very moment, the opportunity to introduce All for One and One for All presented itself. And I said, "Guys, here's then what I need. I need you to help me, help you, help all of us." I said, "I want to put together teams that are going to address the top 10 issues that you've identified here. Each team's going to have labor and management with it. You're going to collectively come up with the solutions. And we're going to decide what we can and cannot do. We had certain limitations." So out of that, we created different kinds of programs that fed into the All for One and One for All philosophy. We had production teams that fed into a larger production team that fed into a larger production team that fed into a group that we had. The group fed into the state-run side of the business. We had safety teams that were safety protecting, not policing. We won the Governor's Award for Safety 5 years in a row, did 1.3 million man-hours without an accident. We had put together something as simple as a newsletter, because as we grew, we needed to find ways to stay connected and be small. I kept saying that. As we get bigger, we got to be smaller. As we get bigger, we got to be smaller. So every time I would travel, the guys in Miami would ask about the guys in Cocoa, and the guys in Daytona would ask about the guys in Tampa. So the newsletter had one objective that we did, and that was to get their names in the paper. 3 times a year, we put their names in the paper. Could care less about the chili recipe that was in the back page. We could really care less about the safety tips and all that stuff that was in there. But what it was an acknowledgement for these people to get their names in the paper. One of them was the birthday, one of them was their anniversary, and one was a photograph of their team doing something good. So that alone changed the culture to what we were trying to accomplish at Trademark Metals. Those factors. There are many, many more. We did cards that we sent home to the wives of the employees so that they knew how hard they were working. we'd have Christmas parties, and we'd host it at Busch Gardens or someplace like that, and we'd buy every kid a gift. These people took home $250 a week or whatever it was. They didn't have discretionary money. They had food, they had this, they had that, but they didn't have a discretionary, funding mechanism for a nice Christmas. So we would have Christmas parties, and every kid got a gift. When we took that survey, the employee approval rating was 47%. 2 years later, we continued to grow the company. Eventually, we wound up getting up to 700 employees and generating $700 million in revenue. We had a 97% employee rating. All right? Thank you. One day, I never recognized what the impact was that we were making. I'm walking through a scrapyard in Pinellas Park, Florida. And there's this guy standing over in the yard working. Got a torch, he's doing some manual labor. And he screams across the yard, he says, "Mr. Laker, all for one, one for all." He goes, "Are you doing a newsletter next month?" And I said, "Of course you're doing a newsletter. Why would you think we'd not do a newsletter?" Now, I'd been in the newspaper all the time, being an athlete. He goes, "Because it's my birthday next month, and I want to show my kids my name in print." And the lesson that I got out of this is people don't care what you say until they know that you care about them. Thank you very much.
To learn more about our storytellers, go to StoryJamTheater.com. Make sure to live a life worth telling, and we'll see you next week.
This has been a Story Jam Theater podcast. Production support provided by Anthony Kovic of Real Video Production and Stuart Mackey of Mackey Productions. All stories are true as affirmed by the storytellers. Special thanks to the Film Commission of Florida, The Hive, and the Tampa Bay area.